The woman stumbling through Sacramento's dusty Main Street in the summer heat of 1872 looked like she'd been through hell itself, blood soaking through the sleeve of her torn calico dress, her auburn hair hanging loose and wild around a face that might have been beautiful if it wasn't so marked by exhaustion and fear. Anabelle Edwards had been traveling with her family's wagon train for 3 months when the raid happened. She'd watched her father take a bullet defending their supplies, watched her mother fall trying to reach him, watched her younger brother Samuel get dragged onto a horse by men whose faces she'd never forget. The outlaws had left her for dead after she'd fought back, earning herself a knife slash across her arm and a blow to the head that had knocked her unconscious. When she'd come to, the wagons were burning and everyone was gone. She'd walked for 2 days straight, surviving on nothing but Will and the small canteen she'd found half buried in the dirt. The sun beat down mercilessly as she made it past the first buildings of Sacramento, California, her vision swimming. She needed help, needed water, needed someone to tell her this nightmare would end. Her legs gave out just as she reached what looked like a general store, and she felt herself falling forward. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Whoa there, miss, I've got you." The voice was deep and steady, somehow cutting through the fog in her mind. She looked up into concerned brown eyes set in a sun-weathered face. The man holding her wore a dusty Stetson and the clothes of a working cowboy, leather chaps over worn denim, a bandana around his neck. He looked to be in his mid-20s, not much older than her own 22 years. "Please," she managed to whisper. "They took my brother, they killed. Easy now, let's get you inside and tended to first. Can you walk?" She tried to nod, but the world tilted sideways. The cowboy swept her up into his arms without hesitation, carrying her as though she weighed nothing. Through her fading consciousness, she heard him calling out, "Doc Patterson, need you quick." The next few hours passed in a blur. She woke in a small room that smelled of carbolic acid and clean linen. An older man with spectacles was bandaging her arm while the cowboy from before stood nearby, his hat in his hands. "You're a lucky young lady," the doctor said. "Another day without water and treatment and you'd have been in serious trouble. This wound was getting infected." "My brother," she said, trying to sit up. "They took him. I have to find him." The cowboy stepped forward. "Miss, you need to rest. Tell us what happened and we'll see what can be done." So she told them. The words came pouring out, everything she'd witnessed, every horrible detail. The wagon train heading to California from Missouri. The attack 3 days out from Sacramento. The men in dark dusters who'd wanted their supplies and money. How they'd shot anyone who resisted. How they'd taken Samuel, only 15 years old, for reasons she couldn't fathom. "Morgan's gang," the cowboy said, his jaw tightening. "They've been hitting wagon trains for months now. Sheriff's been trying to track them, but they keep moving." "You know them?" Hope flared in Anabelle's chest. "Know of them. I'm Ryder Morgan, no relation to that bastard Jake Morgan who leads them, though it shames me to share a name with him. I run cattle between here and the foothills, and I've seen signs of their camps." Dr. Patterson finished with her bandage. "You need at least 3 days of rest, Miss Edwards. That knock to your head was serious and you're severely dehydrated and malnourished." "I don't have 3 days. Every hour that passes, my brother gets farther away." She stood up, swaying immediately. Ryder caught her again, his hands gentle but firm on her shoulders. "You won't do him any good if you collapse again. The doc's right. You don't understand, he's all I have left. My mother, my father, everyone else is gone. Samuel is my only family." Her voice broke, and she hated how weak she sounded. "I do understand," Ryder said quietly. "I lost my whole family to cholera 5 years back. My parents, my two sisters, all within a week. I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning in loss, but rushing out there in your condition won't save him." Anabelle looked into his eyes and saw genuine compassion there, along with a strength that made her want to lean on him even as her pride rebelled against the idea. She'd always been independent, always been the one others leaned on. Her father used to joke that she had more grit than most men he knew. "I'm not strong enough," she whispered, the words torn from somewhere deep inside. "I'm not strong enough to wait, not strong enough to rest while he's out there suffering." Ryder's expression softened. "You're stronger than anyone I know. You survived an attack that killed grown men. You walked through the wilderness for 2 days with a serious injury. You made it here when most people would have given up and died. That kind of strength doesn't disappear just because you need to be smart about your next move." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time since the attack, she felt something other than terror and despair. She felt seen, understood. "Tell you what," Ryder continued. "You rest today and tonight. Tomorrow, if Doc says you're well enough, I'll take you to see Sheriff Coleman. He's been gathering information on Morgan's gang. We'll figure out where they might have taken your brother and make a plan." "A real plan, not a suicide mission." "Why would you help me?" Anabelle asked. "You don't know me." "Because it's the right thing to do, and because nobody should have to face something like this alone." She studied his face, looking for some sign of dishonesty or ulterior motive, but found none. Just a good man offering help to someone who desperately needed it. "Okay," she agreed. "But tomorrow we start searching." Ryder nodded. "Tomorrow, I give you my word." Dr. Patterson had her stay in his spare room, usually reserved for patients who needed monitoring. Ryder left but returned an hour later with a plate of food from the boarding house, fresh bread and beef stew that made her stomach clench with hunger. She hadn't realized how ravenous she was until the smell hit her. "Thought you might need this more than whatever broth Doc was planning to give you," he said, setting it on the small table beside her bed. "Thank you," she said, and meant it for more than just the food. He pulled up a chair, sitting backwards on it with his arms resting on the back. "If you don't mind me asking, what was your family planning in California?" Anabelle swallowed a mouthful of stew before answering. "My father wanted to start a freight business. He'd saved for years, had it all planned out. Sacramento was supposed to be our new beginning." She laughed bitterly. "Some beginning? I'm sorry, truly." "Tell me about your cattle operation," she said, wanting to talk about anything other than her own tragedy. Ryder's face brightened a bit. "It's not much yet, but I've got about 200 head running in the foothills east of here. Started with 20 that I worked 3 years to save up for. I do contract work too, helping move other people's herds, working roundups. The dream is to have my own ranch someday, a real spread where I can build something lasting." "That sounds nice. Building something instead of running from something. Is that what you were doing? Running?" "No, we were running towards something, or at least we thought we were." She set down her spoon, her appetite suddenly gone despite her hunger. "How do people do it? How do they keep going after losing everything?" Ryder was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, some days are harder than others, but you find new things to care about, new reasons to get up in the morning. It doesn't replace what you lost, but it makes the loss bearable." "What's your reason?" "Those cattle, mainly, and the land. There's something about working with your hands, building something from nothing, that makes you feel connected to life again. Plus, I've got friends here in Sacramento, people I care about. Old Pete, who runs the livery stable, Sarah and Tom, who own the boarding house, the sheriff. They became like family." Anabelle felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I want that. I want to feel like life has purpose again instead of just being this endless nightmare." "You will," Ryder assured her. "First we find your brother. Then we figure out the rest." She appreciated that he said "we" instead of "you." It made her feel less alone. True to his word, Ryder arrived early the next morning after she'd spent a restless night plagued by nightmares. Dr. Patterson examined her arm and declared the wound was healing well. And though he still advised more rest, he acknowledged she was strong enough to move around town. The sheriff's office was a sturdy wooden building near the center of Sacramento's Main Street. Sheriff Coleman was a grizzled man in his 50s with a thick mustache and sharp blue eyes that had seen too much. "Miss Edwards," he said after Ryder introduced them. "I heard what happened to your wagon train. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. We found the site 2 days ago and buried the dead proper." "Thank you," Anabelle said, though the words felt inadequate. At least her parents would have some dignity in death. "Now, about your brother. Jake Morgan's gang has taken people before, usually young men. They sometimes force them to join up, hold them against their will until they break or comply. It's evil work." "Where would they take him?" she demanded. Coleman spread a map out on his desk. "Morgan moves between 3 main camps that we know of. One's in the Sierra foothills about 40 miles northeast. Another's down in the valley near Stockton. The third is in the mountains proper, but that's harder to access. We need to check all of them," Anabelle said. "That's dangerous country, miss. These men are killers." "I don't care about danger, I care about my brother." Ryder spoke up. "Sheriff, I know those foothills better than most. If Morgan's using the camps we think he is, I can get us there, but we'll need supplies and preferably some backup." Coleman shook his head. "I can't spare deputies for a maybe. I've got my hands full keeping peace in town, and we just got word of trouble over at the mining camps. Best I can do is give you whatever information I have and wish you luck." "Then that'll have to be enough," Anabelle said firmly. The sheriff looked at her with something like admiration. "You've got sand, young lady. All right. Here's what I know about their patterns and movements." They spent the next hour going over every detail Coleman had gathered. Morgan's gang numbered about 15 men. They were well armed and ruthless. They'd been operating for nearly a year, hitting targets from the Oregon border down to Stockton. Witnesses described a brutal leader who showed no mercy but who was also cunning enough to avoid capture. When they left the sheriff's office, Ryder turned to Anabelle. "You sure about this?" "It's not too late to let the law handle it. The law just said they can't help, so yes, I'm sure. Then we need to get you proper clothes and supplies. That dress won't do for riding." He took her to the general store where a kind woman named Mrs. Chen helped her find sturdy riding pants, a cotton shirt, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat. The clothes felt strange after a lifetime of skirts, but practical. "You'll need to know how to shoot," Ryder said as they walked to the livery stable. "I can shoot. My father taught me. I'm better with a rifle than a pistol, though." "Good. We'll get you both." Anabelle stopped walking, forcing Ryder to stop too. "Why are you doing all this? You could just point me in the right direction and be done with it." Ryder met her eyes squarely. "Because leaving you to face this alone would make me no better than the men who took your brother. And because—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "Because from the moment I caught you falling, something told me I was supposed to help you. Maybe I'm a fool, but I learned to trust those instincts." Something warm bloomed in Anabelle's chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name but didn't want to let go of. "Thank you, Ryder, for everything. Thank me when we get Samuel back safe." Old Pete at the livery stable was a weathered man with kind eyes who'd known Ryder for years. He set Anabelle up with a gentle mare named Daisy while Ryder saddled his own horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding called Buck. "You take care out there," Pete said to Ryder. "Morgan's boys are nothing to trifle with." "I know, Pete. We'll be careful." They spent the rest of that day preparing. Ryder taught Anabelle how to quick-draw the pistol he'd bought her, how to load and reload fast, how to aim for center mass. She was a quick study, her natural coordination serving her well. The rifle felt more comfortable in her hands, though, and she proved to be an excellent shot with it. As the sun set, they camped on the outskirts of Sacramento to get an early start the next morning. Ryder built a small fire and made coffee while Anabelle laid out their bedrolls. "Tell me about Samuel," Ryder said as they ate jerky and hardtack. "What's he like?" Anabelle smiled, the first genuine smile since the attack. "He's brilliant, always reading everything he can get his hands on. Wants to be a lawyer someday. He's got this sense of justice that's so pure it almost hurts to see, and he's funny. He can make anybody laugh, even our father when he was in one of his serious moods. Sounds like a good kid. The best. He didn't want to come west, actually. He was happy in Missouri, had friends there, was doing well in school, but he came because family sticks together." Her voice cracked. "And now I've lost him anyway." "You haven't lost him. We're going to find him. How can you be so sure?" "Because the alternative isn't acceptable. So we keep going until we succeed." Anabelle looked across the fire at this man who'd become her ally so quickly. In the flickering light, his face was all strong angles and determination. "Were you always this optimistic?" Ryder laughed. "God, no. After my family died, I was angry at the whole world. Picked fights, drank too much, made a mess of myself for a good year. It was old Pete who straightened me out, actually. He gave me work at the livery even though I was unreliable as hell, and he never gave up on me. Told me that grief was like breaking a bone. It hurts like nothing else and it takes time to heal, but if you set it right and take care of it, you come back stronger." "And did you? Come back stronger?" "I came back different. Maybe that's its own kind of strength." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the occasional whinny from the horses. Anabelle found herself studying Ryder when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his hands moved with casual competence as he poured more coffee, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings to make sure they were safe. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Do you ever get scared?" "All the time," Ryder admitted. "I'm scared right now if I'm honest, scared we won't find Samuel in time, scared something will happen to you, scared I'll fail you when you're counting on me." His honesty surprised her, "But you keep going anyway." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it, or at least, that's what my father used to say." Anabelle pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders as the night air grew cool. "I'm glad you're here, Ryder Morgan. I don't think I could do this alone, no matter what you said about my strength. You could, but you don't have to." That night, Anabelle lay in her bedroll staring up at the stars, so many of them out here away from town lights. She thought about her parents, about Samuel, about the strange twist of fate that had put Ryder Morgan in front of that general store at exactly the right moment to catch her. Despite everything, despite the grief and fear, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again: hope. They rode out at dawn, heading northeast into the foothills. The terrain grew gradually rougher, flat valley giving way to rolling hills covered in oak and pine. Ryder navigated with the ease of someone who knew the land intimately, pointing out landmarks and explaining the area. "Morgan's first camp should be about 30 miles in," he said as they paused to water the horses at a creek. "It's in a box canyon that's easy to defend but hard to escape from. If they're there, we'll need to be smart about approaching." "What's the plan?" "Scout it first. See what we're dealing with. Then we decide. And if Samuel's there, then we figure out how to get him out without getting you both killed." Anabelle appreciated that he didn't sugarcoat the danger. She'd had enough of people treating her like fragile porcelain. The attack had burned away any illusions she'd had about the world being safe or fair. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the clip-clop of hooves and the calls of birds in the trees. Anabelle found herself hyper-aware of Ryder's presence beside her, the easy way he sat his horse, the casual strength in his movements. She'd never paid much attention to men back in Missouri, too focused on helping her father with the business and caring for her family. Now she found herself noticing everything about this one. "You keep looking at me," Ryder said without turning his head. "Something wrong?" Anabelle felt her cheeks heat. "Just thinking. About how my whole life changed in one day. 3 days ago, I was part of a family heading to a new start. Now I'm riding into the wilderness with a cowboy I just met, hunting for my kidnapped brother. It doesn't feel real. I imagine it doesn't. Grief and shock can make everything feel like you're moving through water." "Is that how it felt for you? After your family," Ryder nodded slowly, "for months. Like I was watching my life happen from outside my body, like nothing quite connected right. It gets better, though, slowly." "I don't want to wait for slowly. I want Samuel back now. I want my parents back. I want everything to be the way it was. I know. But that's not how it works, unfortunately." They rode on, the sun climbing higher and the air growing warmer. Around midday, Ryder called a halt in a shaded grove. "We need to eat and rest the horses. The canyon's still about 3 hours ahead." Anabelle slid from Daisy's saddle, her legs protesting. She wasn't used to riding all day, though she'd never admit it. Ryder pulled out their supplies and they ate a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried apples. "Tell me about your cattle," Anabelle said, wanting conversation to keep her mind off darker thoughts. Ryder's face brightened. "They're mostly longhorns, tough as nails and perfect for this country. I've been breeding for the best stock, keeping the strongest bulls and healthiest cows. In another 5 years, if things go well, I should have enough to buy proper land and build a real ranch. What would you call it? Haven't thought that far ahead, honestly. Never seemed real enough to name. It should be something strong. Something that represents what you've overcome to build it. What would you suggest?" Anabelle considered. "Phoenix Ranch, because you rose from the ashes of your loss to create something new." Ryder looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I like that." "Phoenix Ranch it is, then. Assuming I ever get there. You will. You strike me as someone who finishes what he starts." "I try. Though I've got to admit, this is the most unusual thing I've started in a while. Rescuing foolish women who collapse in the street. Helping extraordinarily brave women save their families," Ryder corrected gently. The way he looked at her when he said it made something flutter in Anabelle's stomach. She looked away, confused by her own reaction. This wasn't the time for such feelings. She needed to focus on Samuel. They mounted up and continued riding. The terrain grew steeper, the trees thicker. Ryder seemed to know every trail and game path, navigating with confidence. As the afternoon wore on, he became more cautious, moving slower and stopping frequently to listen. "We're getting close," he said quietly. "From here on, we need to be silent. No talking unless absolutely necessary." Anabelle nodded, her heart beginning to pound. This was it. They might actually find Samuel today. Ryder led them off the main trail onto a barely visible path that wound through dense undergrowth. The horses picked their way carefully over roots and rocks. After about 20 minutes, Ryder dismounted and gestured for Anabelle to do the same. "We leave the horses here," he whispered. "Go the rest on foot." They tied the horses securely, and Ryder pulled his rifle from its scabbard. Anabelle did the same. Together they crept forward, moving as quietly as possible through the forest. The box canyon came into view gradually, a natural amphitheater carved into the hillside with steep walls on 3 sides. Ryder pulled Anabelle down behind a large fallen log that gave them a view of the canyon below while keeping them hidden. What she saw made her blood run cold. There was definitely a camp there. Multiple tents, a large fire pit, horses in a makeshift corral. And men, at least 10 that she could see, armed and moving about with the casual confidence of people who believed themselves safe. "You see Samuel," Ryder breathed in her ear. Anabelle scanned desperately, looking at each figure, and then she saw him. Her brother, unmistakable even at this distance, sitting near one of the tents with his hands bound. He looked thinner, bruised, but alive. "There," she whispered, pointing. By the tent with the red blanket hung out front, Ryder studied the camp for several long minutes. "Okay. We can't just rush in there. We'd be cut down before we got halfway. We need a plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind where we create a diversion and slip in during the confusion. But timing will be everything." They withdrew carefully back to where they'd left the horses. Once they were far enough away to talk normally, Ryder pulled out the map Sheriff Coleman had given them. "Here's what I'm thinking," he said, pointing to the canyon's layout on the map. "There's a ridge above the camp on the north side. If I can get up there and start a rock slide or fire some shots, most of them will focus their attention that way. While they're distracted, you slip in from the south side, get to Samuel, cut him loose, and get out. I'll cover your escape from above." "No," Anabelle said firmly. "Too dangerous." "What if they shoot you?" "What if they shoot you? At least from the ridge I'll have cover and high ground. Ryder, I can't ask you to risk your life like that." He took her hands in his, the gesture surprising them both. "You're not asking, I'm offering, and it's the best plan we've got. You're smaller and quieter, better suited to sneaking in. I'm a better shot from distance and can create a more convincing diversion." Anabelle wanted to argue but couldn't find a flaw in his logic. "When?" "Tonight. After dark, when they'll have trouble seeing clearly. We'll position ourselves before sunset and wait for the right moment." They spent the next few hours preparing. Ryder showed Anabelle exactly where she'd need to approach from, the path she should take, where to find Samuel. They went over every detail until she could picture it with her eyes closed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they moved back toward the canyon. Ryder squeezed her shoulder. "You can do this," he said. "I know you can. And if something goes wrong, then you run. You get yourself and Samuel out and you don't look back. Promise me." "I promise. But you have to promise me the same. If it goes bad, you get yourself out." "I promise." They separated, Ryder heading up to circle around to the north ridge while Anabelle positioned herself on the south side. The waiting was agony. She crouched behind a boulder, watching the camp through the gathering darkness. The outlaws had lit their campfire and were settling in for the night. She could see Samuel more clearly now, still tied up, hunched over like he'd given up hope. "Hold on," she thought fiercely. "I'm coming." The minutes crawled by. The sky deepened from blue to purple to black, stars emerging one by one. The moon was only a sliver, which would help hide her movements. Anabelle's hands trembled as she gripped her knife, ready to cut Samuel's bonds. Then she heard it. A gunshot from the north ridge, then another. Shouts from the camp as men grabbed weapons and ran toward the sound. More shots, and then the rumble of falling rocks. Ryder had started a small avalanche. Anabelle moved. She darted from her hiding place, keeping low, using every bit of cover available. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She reached the edge of the camp, pressed herself against the back of a tent, waited. Most of the men had run toward the north side. Only 2 remained near the campfire, and they were focused on the commotion. Samuel was only 20 feet away. She took a deep breath and moved again, silent as smoke. Reached Samuel. He looked up, eyes widening in shock. "Anna," he whispered. "Quiet," she breathed, already sawing at his bonds with her knife. "We're getting out of here." The rope parted. Samuel stood, wobbling, and Anabelle caught him. He was weaker than she'd thought. "Can you run?" she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." They started moving back the way she'd come. They'd made it halfway to the edge of camp when someone shouted, "Hey, the prisoner!" Everything happened at once. Men turned toward them. Guns were raised. Anabelle pushed Samuel ahead of her, shouting, "Run!" Shots rang out, but they were shooting wild in the darkness. Then more shots from above, Ryder covering them. One of the outlaws went down. The others scattered, looking for cover. Anabelle and Samuel ran, crashing through the brush with no attempt at stealth now. Behind them, chaos erupted. More gunfire, men yelling orders, horses whinnying in panic. They reached the spot where Anabelle had left Daisy. Samuel practically fell against the mare while Anabelle mounted and pulled him up behind her. She kicked the horse into motion just as figures appeared behind them. "Go." It was Ryder's voice from somewhere above. "I'll catch up." Anabelle urged Daisy forward, the mare responding gallantly despite carrying double. They crashed through the forest in the moonlight, branches whipping at them. Samuel clung to her, and she could feel him shaking. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she heard hoofbeats behind them. She nearly panicked until she recognized Buck and saw Ryder's silhouette. "Keep going," he called. "Don't stop." They rode hard for another hour before Ryder finally signaled them to slow down. They were miles from the canyon now, and there was no sign of pursuit. "They won't follow in the dark," Ryder said. "Too much risk of losing the trail, but we need to keep moving until dawn, put as much distance between us and them as possible." "Understood," Anabelle said. Then, "Samuel, this is Ryder Morgan. He's the one who helped me find you." Samuel's voice was hoarse. "Thank you, I thought I was going to die there." "You're safe now," Ryder assured him. "Or as safe as we can make you. Let's keep riding." They continued through the night at a steadier pace, the horses tired but willing. Samuel told them in brief, pained sentences what had happened after he was taken. How they'd wanted him to join their gang, threatened him when he refused. How they'd beaten him when he tried to escape. How he'd heard them talking about using him as leverage somehow, though he never understood how. As dawn broke, Ryder led them to a hidden spot near a stream where they could rest safely for a few hours. Samuel practically fell from the horse, and Anabelle helped him to the ground. "He needs food and water," she said to Ryder. "I've got both, and some medical supplies." While Ryder tended to Samuel's injuries and got food into him, Anabelle stood watch, her rifle ready. She couldn't quite believe they'd done it. They'd actually rescued Samuel. Relief and exhaustion warred within her. After making sure Samuel was settled and sleeping, Ryder came to stand beside her. "We did it," he said quietly. "You did it. That was incredibly brave what you did up on that ridge. We both were. You went into that camp alone. That took more courage than I could manage." They stood in companionable silence for a moment. Then Anabelle did something that surprised herself. She turned and wrapped her arms around Ryder in a fierce hug. He stiffened in surprise, then returned the embrace, his arms coming around her solidly. She pressed her face against his chest and let herself shake, all the fear and adrenaline finally catching up with her. "It's okay," Ryder murmured. "You're okay. He's okay. You did it." "We did it," she corrected, her voice muffled against his shirt. When she finally pulled back, she found Ryder looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. There was something in his eyes, something warm and wondering. "Anabelle," he said softly. "Yes. I know this isn't the time or place, and I know we barely know each other, but I need to say something. These past few days with you, helping you, watching your strength and courage, I've felt something I haven't felt in years. Like I'm alive again instead of just going through the motions." Anabelle's heart began to race for an entirely different reason than before. "Ryder, I'm not asking for anything," he continued quickly. "I just needed you to know, you've changed something in me." She reached up and touched his face, her palm against his stubbled cheek. "You've changed something in me, too. You gave me hope when I had none. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I don't know what happens next, but I know I don't want to say goodbye to you when this is over." Ryder turned his head and kissed her palm, a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting with tears. "Then we won't say goodbye." They stood there in the early morning light, two people who'd found each other in the worst of circumstances and discovered something precious. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Samuel's voice, rough with sleep, broke the spell. "Anna, where are we?" Anabelle reluctantly stepped back from Ryder. "We're safe, Sam. We're heading back to Sacramento." "What about Mother and Father?" Samuel's eyes held a hope that broke her heart. She knelt beside him and took his hands. "Sam, I'm so sorry. They didn't make it. It's just us now." Samuel's face crumpled and he began to cry, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. Anabelle held him, crying too, both of them finally able to grieve together. Ryder gave them space, tending to the horses and keeping watch. When their tears finally subsided, he brought them both coffee and breakfast. "I know it doesn't seem like it now," he said to Samuel, "but you'll get through this. You both will, and you're not alone. You've got each other and you've got friends." Samuel looked at this stranger who'd helped rescue him. "Why did you do all this? Anna said you just met her." "Because it was the right thing to do, and because your sister is one of the bravest people I've ever met. She walked through hell to save you." Samuel turned to Anabelle. "You always were stubborn as a mule." Despite everything, Anabelle laughed. "Takes one to know one." The ghost of a smile crossed Samuel's face. "Fair point." They rested for a few more hours, then pushed on toward Sacramento. The journey back was slower with Samuel in his weakened state, but he was young and strong, rallying as the day went on. That night they made camp in a protected hollow. After Samuel fell asleep, exhausted from the day's riding, Anabelle and Ryder sat together by the fire. "What will you do when we get back to Sacramento?" Ryder asked. Anabelle shook her head. "I honestly don't know. Everything we had was in those wagons. The money my father saved, our possessions, all of it gone. I don't have a plan beyond getting Samuel somewhere safe. You could stay in Sacramento, both of you, and do what? I can't impose on the kindness of strangers forever." Ryder was quiet for a moment. What if they weren't strangers? "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully. "I mean I've got that cattle operation. It's not much, but it's growing. I could use help, someone to manage the business side of things while I handle the cattle. Your father was in freight, so you must know something about running a business." "I kept his books, handled his correspondence, managed supply orders," Anabelle confirmed. "See, you'd be perfect. And Samuel, once he's healed, he could help too. Or if he wants to pursue that law degree, Sacramento's got schools. He could study while working part-time." Anabelle felt hope blooming again. "You'd really do that? Give us work? It's not charity. I genuinely need the help and you genuinely have the skills. Besides," he added more softly, "I meant what I said earlier. I don't want to say goodbye to you." "I don't want to say goodbye to you either," Anabelle admitted. "But Ryder, we barely know each other. What if this is just, I don't know, the intensity of the situation making us feel things that aren't real? Is that what you think this is?" She looked into his eyes, searching her own heart. "No, I think this is real, impossibly fast and completely unexpected, but real." "Then let's give it a chance. No pressure, no expectations, just see where it goes." "Okay," Anabelle said. "Yes, let's see where it goes." Ryder reached out and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. They sat like that, hands clasped, watching the fire, both lost in thoughts of the future. They reached Sacramento 2 days later, dusty and exhausted but intact. Sheriff Coleman was surprised and pleased to see them. "I'll be damned," he said. "You actually pulled it off." "Got the boy back and lived to tell about it." "Barely," Ryder said. "Morgan's gang is still out there, though. They'll be angry about this." "Let me worry about Morgan. You've done more than anyone had a right to ask." They got Samuel settled with Dr. Patterson for a proper examination and treatment. The doctor declared him bruised, battered, and half-starved, but fundamentally sound. With rest and good food, he'd make a full recovery. That evening, Ryder took Anabelle to meet Sarah and Tom at the boarding house. The couple, a warm-hearted pair in their 40s, took one look at Anabelle and Samuel and immediately offered them a room at a reduced rate. "Any friend of Ryder's is a friend of ours," Sarah declared. "And you poor dears have been through enough. You'll stay here and I won't hear any arguments about payment until you're back on your feet." "We can't accept charity," Anabelle started to protest. Tom cut her off gently. "It's not charity, it's community. That's how we do things out here. Someday, when you're established, you'll help someone else the same way." Anabelle felt tears threatening again. After so much loss and hardship, this kindness was almost overwhelming. Over the next few weeks, a routine established itself. Samuel recovered his strength under Sarah's dedicated feeding and Dr. Patterson's care. Anabelle began working with Ryder, learning about his cattle operation and taking over the business management as promised. She proved to have a natural head for numbers and organization, quickly streamlining his record-keeping and finding ways to increase profits. She also found herself falling more deeply in love with Ryder Morgan with each passing day. It was in the little things. The way he brought her coffee every morning just how she liked it. The way he listened when she talked about her parents, never trying to rush her grief or tell her to move on. The way he treated Samuel like a younger brother, patient and kind, but also pushing him to grow stronger. And the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and wonderful. One evening about a month after their return, Ryder asked Anabelle to take a ride with him. They headed out to the land where his cattle grazed, the hills golden in the setting sun. "I wanted to show you something," he said, leading her to the top of a ridge. From there, she could see the whole valley spread out below, the Sacramento River winding through it like a silver ribbon, the town in the distance and the mountains rising up beyond. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "This is where I want to build it," Ryder said. "Phoenix Ranch, right here on this ridge. A house looking out over the valley, barns for the cattle, room to grow." Anabelle could picture it perfectly. "It'll be wonderful." "I want you to be part of it," Ryder said, turning to her. "Not just as my business manager, though you're brilliant at that. I want you to build it with me. As my wife, if you'll have me." Anabelle's breath caught. "Ryder, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a couple of months. But I also know I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Anabelle Edwards. I love your strength and your courage and your kindness. I love how you never give up. I love how you make me want to be better. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me." Tears were streaming down Anabelle's face, but she was smiling. "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. And yes, I'll marry you." Ryder let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. When he set her down, he kissed her, and it felt like coming home. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony in Sacramento. Samuel walked Anabelle down the aisle, proud despite the tears in his eyes. Sarah and Tom stood up as witnesses. Half the town turned out, these people who'd become family to the orphaned siblings. The wedding night was tender and sweet, Ryder gentle with Anabelle, both of them discovering each other with wonder and love. In his arms, she finally felt safe again, like she could let go of the constant vigilance that had kept her going since the attack. "I've got you," Ryder whispered. "Always." "And I've got you," she whispered back. They spent the next several years building Phoenix Ranch from the ground up. Anabelle's business acumen combined with Ryder's knowledge of cattle and land made them a formidable team. The ranch grew steadily, becoming one of the most successful operations in the Sacramento area. Samuel thrived too. He worked on the ranch for a year, regaining his strength and confidence, then enrolled in a law program in Sacramento. He studied hard, driven by that deep sense of justice that had always defined him. On weekends, he'd ride out to the ranch and help with whatever needed doing, part of the family they were building together. 3 years into their marriage, Anabelle gave birth to a son they named Robert, after Ryder's father. The baby had his father's brown eyes and his mother's determination, making his presence known from the moment he entered the world. Ryder was besotted. Anabelle would often find him in the nursery in the middle of the night, just watching their son sleep with an expression of pure wonder on his face. "I never thought I'd have this," he told her one night. "A family again. A home. Someone to love who loves me back." "We're blessed," Anabelle agreed. "Both of us." 2 years later, twin girls arrived, Lily and Rose, bringing chaos and joy in equal measure. The ranch house they'd built on that ridge was full of laughter and life, everything Ryder had dreamed of and more. Samuel passed the bar exam when he was 23 and opened a practice in Sacramento, quickly gaining a reputation for taking on cases others wouldn't touch and fighting for justice, regardless of a client's ability to pay. He never forgot what it was like to be helpless and afraid, and he used that memory to fuel his passion for protecting others. He visited the ranch often, doting on his nieces and nephew, helping Anabelle and Ryder with legal matters for the ranch. On one such visit, he brought a young woman with him, a school teacher named Margaret whom he'd been courting. "She's special," he told Anabelle privately. "Like you and Ryder are special. When you know, you know." Anabelle hugged her brother tight. "Then don't let her go." Samuel and Margaret married the following spring, and Anabelle stood up as a witness just as Samuel had for her. The circle of family grew wider. 5 years after their marriage, Ryder surprised Anabelle on their anniversary by taking her back to the spot where he'd proposed. "Remember when I showed you this view and told you about my dreams?" he asked. "Of course. It's one of my favorite memories. Look around now. Tell me what you see." Anabelle looked. The ranch spread out below them, the house they'd built together, the barns and corrals, the cattle grazing peacefully, the workers' quarters for the men they employed. And she could see their children playing in the yard, Samuel and Margaret's buggy coming up the drive for Sunday dinner. "I see everything we built," she said. "Everything we dreamed of. You made it all possible," Ryder said. "That day I caught you falling in Sacramento, I thought I was just helping someone in trouble. I had no idea I was catching my whole future." Anabelle kissed him softly. "Best fall I ever took." As the years passed, Phoenix Ranch became legendary in the region, but not just for its success in cattle. It became known as a place where people in trouble could find help. Anabelle and Ryder never forgot what it was like to face impossible odds, and they made it their mission to give others the same chance they'd had. They took in orphans and gave them work and education. They extended credit to struggling ranchers when the banks wouldn't. They stood up against injustice wherever they saw it, Ryder with his quiet strength and Anabelle with her fierce determination. Samuel's law practice flourished, and he often partnered with his sister and brother-in-law on cases involving land rights and fair treatment of workers. Together, they made a real difference in Sacramento and the surrounding areas. The children grew. Robert proved to have his father's love of the land and his mother's business sense. He'd often say he was born to run Phoenix Ranch, and everyone believed him. The twins, Lily and Rose, were as different as night and day despite being identical. Lily loved the cattle and the outdoors, while Rose preferred books and planning, but together they were unstoppable. 2 more children followed, another boy named Samuel after his uncle, and finally a girl they named Emma after Anabelle's mother. The ranch house expanded to accommodate them all, full of noise and love, and the kind of organized chaos that comes with a large, happy family. On Robert's 18th birthday, Ryder took him up to the ridge where he'd proposed to Anabelle all those years ago. "This ranch will be yours someday," Ryder told his son. "You and your siblings will inherit it together. But more than the land and the cattle, I want you to inherit the values it was built on. Strength tempered with compassion. Success with integrity. Never forget that we started with nothing but hope and hard work. Never forget to help others the way others helped us." "I won't forget," Robert promised. "You and Mother have shown us every day what it means to build something meaningful." When Robert was 20, he married a rancher's daughter from the next valley over, a smart and capable young woman named Alice who fit into the family perfectly. They took over more of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing Ryder and Anabelle to slow down a bit, though neither could ever fully retire. Samuel the younger went into law like his uncle, while young Emma showed a talent for horses that surpassed even her father's. Lily married a cattle buyer and moved to San Francisco, though she visited often. Rose became a teacher, opening a school on ranch land to serve the children of their workers and the surrounding community. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Anabelle and Ryder sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Their grandchildren played in the yard while their children and their spouses gathered for dinner inside. "Do you ever think about that day in Sacramento?" Anabelle asked. "When you caught me falling," Ryder smiled. "All the time. Best day of my life, though I didn't know it then." "I was so broken," Anabelle reflected, "so sure I'd never be whole again. You told me you weren't strong enough. And you told me I was stronger than anyone you knew." "I was right," Ryder said, taking her hand. "You were then and you are now, but the best part is we became even stronger together." Anabelle leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable and content. "We built a good life, didn't we?" "The best life. Better than I ever dreamed possible." They sat in peaceful silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the valley in shades of purple and gold. Inside, they could hear their family laughing, the sound of dishes being set out, someone playing the piano Rose had insisted they buy. "Thank you," Anabelle said softly. "For what?" "For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For being there when I had no one. For loving me." "Thank you for letting me," Ryder replied. "For trusting me when you had every reason not to trust anyone. For building this life with me. For giving me a family again." "We saved each other," Anabelle said. "You saved me from despair, and I saved you from loneliness." "Best rescue mission ever attempted." Anabelle laughed, that free, joyful sound that Ryder never got tired of hearing. "Come on, Cowboy. Our family's waiting for us." They stood and walked into the house hand in hand, into the warmth and light and love that filled every corner. This was what they'd built from tragedy and loss, from a chance meeting on a dusty Sacramento street, from one person's courage and another's compassion. This was Phoenix Ranch, rising from the ashes. This was home. Many more years passed in happiness and prosperity. The ranch continued to thrive under Robert and Alice's management, with help from all the siblings. Samuel's law practice became one of the most respected in California, known for taking on important cases that set precedents for workers' rights and fair treatment. Anabelle and Ryder grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They were blessed to see their grandchildren grow and have children of their own, the family tree spreading wide and strong. On a warm spring day when Anabelle was 71 and Ryder 73, they took one last ride together up to their ridge. It was harder now, their bodies not what they once were, but some things were worth the effort. They sat together looking out over the valley they'd called home for nearly 50 years. "No regrets?" Ryder asked. "Not a single one," Anabelle replied. Only that we don't have another 50 years ahead of us. We've had a good run, Cowboy, better than most people dream of." "Thanks to you, you're still the strongest person I know." Anabelle smiled. "And you're still the kindest. Though I'm not sure I believe you about the strength anymore. I do. Strength isn't just about survival, it's about building a life worth living after surviving. And you did that." "We did that." They sat together as the sun set one more time over Phoenix Ranch, two people who'd found each other in the darkest of times and chosen to build something beautiful. Ryder passed peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, surrounded by his family. Anabelle held his hand as he slipped away, whispering how much she loved him, how grateful she was for their life together. She lived another 3 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories of the old days, of wagon trains and outlaws, of a young woman who collapsed in the street and the cowboy who caught her. "Your grandfather saved my life that day," she'd tell them. "Not just by catching me, but by believing in me, by showing me that strength wasn't about never falling down, but about getting back up, about building something from nothing, about choosing love even when you've lost everything." When Anabelle finally passed, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Ryder had created, her last words were soft but clear. "I'm coming, Ryder. Wait for me." She was laid to rest beside him on a hill overlooking Phoenix Ranch, under the wide California sky they'd both loved. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single line Anabelle had requested. "Together, we were strong enough." Phoenix Ranch continued through the generations, never losing sight of the values Anabelle and Ryder had instilled. It remained a place of hard work and compassion, of strength and kindness, of family and community. The story of how it all began, of a collapsing woman and a cowboy who caught her, of courage in the face of tragedy, of love found in the most unexpected places, became legend. Parents told it to their children, who told it to theirs, keeping alive the memory of 2 people who proved that from the ashes of loss, something beautiful could rise. In Sacramento, a small plaque was eventually placed near where the general store had once stood, commemorating the spot where Anabelle Edwards and Ryder Morgan's story began. It became a popular spot for proposals, young couples believing it was good luck to start their love stories where such an enduring one had started. The ranch itself became a historical landmark, preserved by the descendants who still worked it, still ran cattle in the foothills, still helped their neighbors, still believed in the values their ancestors had lived by. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the valley and painted the sky in brilliant colors, people would swear they could sometimes see 2 figures on the ridge, sitting together, hands clasped, watching over the legacy they'd built. Some said it was just the light playing tricks. Others knew better. Love like Anabelle and Ryder's didn't just end. It echoed through the generations, a reminder that strength comes in many forms, but the strongest of all is the strength to love, to build, to hope, even when every reason says you should give up. The story of Phoenix Ranch, of the woman who thought she wasn't strong enough and the cowboy who knew better, lived on. It became more than just a tale of the Old West. It became a testament to human resilience, to the power of compassion, to the way one person's belief in another can change everything. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when this life is done, Anabelle and Ryder Morgan rode together still. Forever young, forever in love, forever proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the hardest circumstances, that sometimes falling down is just the beginning of rising up, and that sometimes, when you think you have nothing left, you're about to find everything you never knew you needed. Their story, begun on a dusty Sacramento street in 1872, lived on in the land they'd loved, the family they'd created, and the countless lives they'd touched. It was a story of the West, yes, but more than that, it was a story of the human heart, its capacity for love and strength and renewal. And it was a story that would never truly end, because the best stories, the truest stories, the ones built on love and sacrifice and unwavering faith in one another, those stories become eternal, woven into the very fabric of the places and people they touched, living on forever in memory and in legacy, in the land and in the hearts of all who knew them. Phoenix Ranch stood strong, a monument not to wealth or power, but to two people who'd found each other when both were lost, who'd built a life from ruins, who'd proved that strength and love combined can overcome anything. And that was the greatest legacy of all.